Hello, everyone. On behalf of CAI and the Great IT Professional, I'd like to welcome everyone today to this panel discussion on understanding cryptocurrencies and their impact. My name is Michael Maludis, and I will be your moderator for today's event. I'd like to say a few words about our panelists today. Dr. Larry Dribin is a consultant and educator who assists organizations to understand and adopt new technologies and new government regulations. His consulting company, the Pearl Street Group, provides program and project management, process improvement, and measurement consulting services to both business and information technology organizations. Dr. Dribin is also an adjunct instructor at DePaul University, Chicago's College of Computers and Digital Media, where he teaches a variety of courses in cloud computing and software engineering. Don Shafer developed Athens Group's oil and gas practice, and he leads engineers in delivering software engineering services for exploration, production, and pipeline monitoring systems for international clients. An IEEE senior member, he is a software engineering subject matter expert for the Cockrell School of Engineering at the University of Texas in Austin. Athens Group is available internationally to assist organizations struggling with securing their information and operational technology networks, and they have mitigated Stuxnet and internet trolls and work with cybersecurity as well. Harumi Urata-Thompson is a business and management consultant who helps identify and secure profitable new revenue opportunities for her clients. Her technical specialty areas include AI, blockchain, cybersecurity, and even space. And she drives value for her clients by advising on growth strategies, strategic planning, M&A, digital strategy, innovation, product development, implementation and management, agile, and also risk assessments. So without further ado, I think we're ready to get started with today's panel. It's very exciting. This is a very dynamic topic. It's changing very quickly. For those of you who have been following the news, I think you've noticed that it's in the news almost every day. There's something related to cryptocurrencies. I also want to let you know, full disclaimer, we're not here to offer any investment advice. That's not what this is. This panel discussion is for informational purposes only. Okay, we are not offering investment advice. But many of I want to let you know, I'm dealing with some very smart people here, and a lot of this has been very new to me. I've been learning a lot, and I'm sure you have a lot of really basic questions. So before we get into some of the deeper topics related to risk and regulation and adoption, I want to throw out a basic question to the panel, and perhaps we can start with Harumi. And Harumi, there are thousands of coins and tokens and apps that fall underneath this rubric of cryptocurrencies. And so in that sense, is there any way that you can help give our attendees a solid definition about cryptocurrency? What is it? What isn't it? And how do we differentiate it in this landscape?
Yeah, Michael, thank you very much. As introduced, my name is Harumi Urata-Thompson, and I'm very much looking forward to talking about this thing called cryptocurrency that we hear about every day in some form or media. And what is the definition of cryptocurrency? We can give a lot of technical definitions, but really, at the end of the day, it is a virtual currency that utilizes specific technology, cryptography, that is backing the whole sort of currency concept that runs on the distributed ledger technology. So it's beyond that. I mean, if you can get over that cryptography word and then blockchain or distributed ledger technology word, it is another form of currency that is not quite as usable in a sense as US dollars that is sitting in your wallet today, but we are hoping that it would get there. And then that's really all there is to it for cryptocurrency, something that is virtual and then running on a specific technology.
Can somebody help us distinguish? I know I had this question myself. You've got coins and tokens and apps. Can anybody help me distinguish between these things? What's the difference, for instance, between a coin and a token? Is there any significant difference, or are they kind of equally in the same category in some way?
I'll take that too in that case. I do think that, when we say coins, we generally are talking about the crypto-backed that acts more like money than has a value. When we say token, it still does have a value, but we're talking more about the utilities aspect of what that token can do. So it's more like a utility token when we generally refer to it as token, and cryptocurrency is more like something that is closer to money as we understand it today. So application is application. So really, I mean, at the end of the day, cryptocurrency is just another application that is running on the blockchain. So I think those are probably the very simple way of distinguishing the three terms that you just asked about, Michael. But I'm sure other panelists have other ways to kind of tackle this question.
Yeah, let me add, just from a definitional point of view, cryptocurrency, it's meant to be highly secure. So that's one of the features of it. It's decentralized, which is a key feature. And it's meant to be and designed as it's design anonymous. And the last thing that I think is really important, because it defines a lot of other limitations and capabilities, it's done without a trusted third party. So banks, credit companies, PayPal are all trusted third parties. We exchange money between them for services all the time. But they're not, they all have their trusted third party. In the middle, there is no trusted third party. And I think that's really key from a point of view, because that ends up some limitations on how many transactions per second these cryptocurrencies can handle, and their latency, how long it takes to clear a transaction.
Yeah, Michael, if I can jump in real quick too, I think one of the reasons why my background here is so fuzzy is it kind of relates to how I look at cryptocurrencies as being fairly fuzzy also. I think that for me, the distinction is it's either fiat, which means it's backed by a central government. There's some central government backing it, or if it's not, going along with what Harumi said and what Larry said, it's a currency that's based on decentralization. It's based on a consensus as to its value and when a transaction's made. So it really is something that virtually exists, and if you own part of it, you own a certain piece of it, you can figure out where that is. You can also exchange it for other value, but to me, it's very much a way to look at a virtual currency.
So I got some different definitions from all of you, which, you mentioned it's virtual, it's based on cryptographic mathematics, it's anonymous, it's decentralized, it disintermediates third parties, it's not fiat. One of the interesting points that you made was that, I'm not sure which one made it, about it being anonymous. And yet I think we discussed it, or I saw in the news recently that the government that was able to actually read the blockchain and see all the transactions, and was able to actually go back to people and sort of say, you owe taxes on these transactions that you made. And so to what extent is this really anonymous? I mean, you're still able to read the underlying transaction history from the blockchain. So how can somebody speak to that? Am I maybe misunderstanding that particular issue?
Well, it's pseudo-anonymous for one. So everyone knows that there are various wallets, and they know that somebody behind it has a name and whatever. It depends on the exchanges. Crypto exchanges in the U.S. are required to follow certain standards set by the Federal Reserve and the SEC. You have to, it's like know your customer. For certain transactions over a certain amount, they have to know who you are. When you go onto Coinbase, you're asked for your social security number, so they know who you are. Other exchanges in other parts of the world don't follow those, and it makes it very hard to trace. I think what happened with the colonial and the tracing of that was it really, you can trace the transactions. Every transaction's visible in plain text, but the owners of it are now not. Their keys are cryptographically secure. But if you know that, you can go back to say, who is the one who bought this, at what exchange? And there's a lot of things that they think happened, that one of the hackers in that case accidentally put in some of their wallet addresses in a plain text format in an email. Somehow I think what I heard is that the FBI just used plain good old police work to find it. There was nothing fragile about the blockchain or unique that they were able to penetrate the pseudo-anonymity, other than that they are required to know who certain customers are in the US.
Can somebody give our audience an example, just an idea of a couple things, just to get the scope of this? One, what's the total market cap of all these cryptocurrencies currently, and can you help put that in perspective? And two, we're all familiar with Bitcoin, and everybody reads about that in the news, but there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of coins and tokens. Can you also give us an idea of maybe 3 or 4 other cryptocurrencies, just so that we have something to put in our minds? Maybe the top 3 or 4 besides Bitcoin.
Well, let me address the market cap, because I was looking at that this morning, and then I think, Harumi can probably give a good answer to what some of the different types of coins are. The market cap this morning of all the cryptocurrencies in the world, the thousands of them that are out there, was right around $1.61 trillion US. And you have to think of, well, that's how do I get my head around what that is? Well, if I look at the top 10 countries by gross domestic product, the top 10 in the world, the 1.6 trillion would make it about a 9.5. It's between Canada and Russia in its size. So being one of the top 10 in and of itself, it's equal to one of the top 10 economies of the world. So there is an enormous amount of money tied up, all kinds of money tied up in cryptocurrencies.
What would you say is the moving on beyond basic definitions here? Can somebody give us some idea about the potential usefulness of cryptocurrencies beyond their obvious use as a speculative investment vehicle? Is there any other potential usefulness for cryptocurrencies besides the fact that people are buying it for speculation in the hopes that it's going to appreciate in value?
Okay, so I guess I'll take that. As it was mentioned, I mean, I know even within what we generally refer to as a cryptocurrency, a couple of different types of cryptocurrencies, as we see it, part of it is really the characteristics, and some of it is by sort of regulatory definitions. But we were talking about top 3, top 5, top 10 kind of coins. Let's talk about the absolute top 2 by far are, as you know this one. Bitcoin and Ether. These two take the sort of big chunk of even the top 20 percentage-wise of the market share, and then followed by a few other coins that right now on the coin market cap, to be specific of the source. The third one is Tether and USDT, and then followed by BNB and then ADA. So, between these 5 different coins, we have different characteristics that we can talk about. The first 2 are already have been described as the US regulators as their commodities, meaning they are no longer cryptocurrency per se. They definitely do not have the possibility of being classified as a private equity down the line, which most of the cryptocurrencies out there still have that nature, including the number 4 and the number 5 possibly that we have right now. The third one, the USDT, this is a stable coin. So effectively, roughly speaking, it's got a 1-to-1 conversion ratio with the US dollars, and issuer of the stable coins have an obligation of keeping the same amount of money in a bank account, so that they can always do the conversion or the redemption of one side to another, sort of fiat to stable coin or stable coin to fiat. So even within just by looking at the top 5, we have this different characteristics of the cryptocurrencies. So when we talk about use cases, they all become slightly different. Of course, there's some common ground as well, because there are a lot of exchanges and DeFi platforms that are beginning to emerge where we can actually do some kind of trading. And then not all of them are pure speculation or pure buy and hold. So definitely, I do see this as an alternative investment vehicle where they could be the next equity or fixed income or money market instruments where you can do not just a speculative, but to basically diversify your portfolio. You hold on to a little bit of those and you kind of create your future wealth based off of that. And then, of course, there's a trading aspect of it, and then there is a little bit of a deployment aspect of it. So depending on which community you are part of, which cryptocurrency you hold, there's a specific usability on that platform as well, based on which coin that you have, because there are, just on the coin market cap alone, they're covering more than 10,000 coins. That's a lot of communities. That's a lot of projects that we are talking about, and each one of them comes with a different utility. And then this is where actually the importance of, is it going to be a currency? Is it going to be a more like a utility token, or is it going to be deemed equity down the line? I mean, we don't know where some of these coins will go, but depending on that, the usage will be determined to a certain extent.
So that being said, where are we? I mean, and clearly we're still in early stages. There is a lot of uncertainty, but where would you say, Don or Larry, how would you characterize where we are right now in terms of the current state of crypto, in terms of adoption? Where are we really in terms of practical adoption right now? And how would you characterize the current state based in that respect?
I would say it's really very, very limited because some of the limitations of the current technology. So right now, I'm going to say we're using cryptocurrency version 1.0. There's much talk about going to 2.0. Ethereum's planning to go to Ethereum 2.0. Blockchain has a big change. Bitcoin has a big change coming up. The Taproot exchange that should take effect in October. There will be big change to how it's structured and its performance. Right now, you have to look at those major cryptocurrencies today have a lot of limitations that oftentimes get glossed over by the marketing hype. They do 7 transactions a second. 7 transactions a second. That probably couldn't handle all the Starbucks in just the north side of Chicago if everyone just used Starbucks to do their transactions, let alone all of Chicago, let alone all of the world, just in Starbucks, let alone all the other transactions. You know, Visa and MasterCard do over 3,000, probably on peak days, 10,000. PayPal does in the tens of in the thousands. So we're a long way from using that. Also, there's a long time to clear a transaction. On a short-term transaction, if I buy a cup of coffee with a Bitcoin, it's going to take me an hour, roughly an hour, before I'm sure that that transaction is cleared. It takes six blocks on top of my block, which is a block every 10 minutes. And that's baked into the technology. That's baked into the design of Nakamoto when he did this, that it can't be changed. There was a big change 4 years ago in Bitcoin to go from 1 megabyte blocks to 2 megabyte. And it took a while to accept that and also to reduce the size of transactions. But that got him to 7 transactions a second, not to 70 or 700 or 7,000. Now, the changes in Ethereum are trying to go to a much higher, into the 1,000 range. We'll see if that works. There's been a lot of questions about these technologies. Bitcoin's been talking about using a Lightning network to speed things up. But in reality, in tests right now, there are 3 different major Lightning networks that people are trying out, another half dozen other ones that are behind the scenes. So I think we're going to see a crypto 2.0, and maybe a 3.0. And when we get to that point, we will see the ability to handle tens of thousands of transactions and the ability to have a whole different landscape financially than we do today. But today it's very limited in actually using it for cash replacement.
So I think and I agree with a lot of what Larry has said. I think I want to go back, and when I look at the utility of it, I want to go back and I have to ask the question, why did I ever care about cryptocurrencies? I'm an engineer. We do a lot of software work. We work internationally. I've got teams working all over the world. 5 years ago, a number of our clients, some very senior management of ours at British Petroleum, Exxon, and Royal Dutch Shell asked us, what are the security concerns about using cryptocurrencies? Because when you look at adoption, you're going to have to get adoption by major organizations. It's not banks. It's the fact that Exxon adopts it and allows you to buy gas with a cryptocurrency. That's where it's going to get adopted. And as we dug into it and looked at it, we looked at the concerns, a number of the processing concerns and so on, but just the adoption was one of the areas that concerned me enough. When I look at where it's being used, and I think we all know the apocryphal stories of Mt. Gox losing all of its money in 2014 and everything it had in cryptocurrency, but there's also been Silk Road 1.0, and now we're looking at Silk Road 2.0 and 3.0, where people are using cryptocurrency for basically tracking illegal purchases, illegal contracts. And from what I've seen of it and was very familiar with Silk Road, the first Silk Road, the FBI, the Securities Exchange Commission, and a number of the FCC and other national organizations, international organizations are taking a very hard look at cryptocurrencies, and their concern is one of illegality. So long story short, I think there are some uses for it today. I think it's going to take a major organization to adopt it wholesale internationally before we see any shifts in it occurring.
I just want to draw everybody's attention to the fact that Harumi about a year ago did a webcast with us on the blockchain, and there's a lot of great stuff. If you want to go to the Great IT Pro website, you can sort of find that webcast, and she has a lot of, she goes into great depth about a lot of things we're talking about. One of the slides that she had was she actually outlined 9 specific hurdles to adoption, discussed them. Things like regulation, price transparency, convertibility, hedging, the limited usage, general security concerns, which Don just mentioned. So I'm going to pose a question to Harumi. Harumi, in light of these many hurdles to adoption, which you have done a lot of research on, what would you say is going to be required for institutional acceptance at this point, and what would you say would be required for what we would consider mass adoption?
Absolutely. So just to address a couple of points that Larry and Don has brought up, I do absolutely agree that there is a technology performance issue at the moment for sort of to be able to accept some kind of a massive payment that goes through several 100,000 payment per minute, or also the legality around it. I absolutely agree, and it's those, as Michael just mentioned. I did the presentation on not just that subject, but did that, and then the landscape hasn't changed dramatically. Although I will say this, that some countries accepted Bitcoin, not all of the cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin as the medium tender, the payment as one of the payment methods accepted, and also a major sort of payment company like PayPal to be actually putting this under their portfolio. I think the landscape is slowly and rapidly at the same time changing. I think one thing I wanna remind all of you is that this technology, even the oldest one, blockchain, and then there are a lot of other blockchain, meaning Bitcoin, and then other cryptocurrencies and tokens that were born after that. the Bitcoin is barely 12 years old, right? It's not even 12 years old yet. And I think that because we are living in an era where everybody gets the information really fast and everybody has social media access, everybody has a lot of different news to read off of, and then everybody gets the chance to learn about unknowns a little bit better than we did, let's say, 50 years ago. We are expecting almost unreasonable growth, if you will, to everything that we hear about. Let's talk about some other emerging technologies before I'm going back to Michael's question about other technologies that are considered within sort of that bucket of emerging technologies, space, artificial intelligence. All these, actually, they already existed back in 50s. It's not only until relatively recently that all these things became everybody's sort of part of the everyday language to, let's say, talk about artificial intelligence. Well, we see all these rockets being launched into the space and more like a sort of normal activity rather than something special that you might see only once in 10 years or something of that nature. So I think that we are living in an era where we are becoming somewhat unforgiving to allow these technology to grow up, for it to become what we need it to be to keep up with the pace of the life that we have today. So with that, I'm going back to Michael's question. What do we really need for the institutional adoption and the mass adoption? Some of the areas that I see for both of them, for all of them actually, like the legal clarification is absolutely needed, because what stops people from really being able to use it as everyday instruments, whether it's a payment or hold it as part of their portfolio, is that it's okay to buy it today, it's okay to hold it today, it's okay to use it today, and it's still going to be okay 6 months from now or 6 years from now to do the same. Because what you do today without 100% clarification, not even 100% clarification, but let's say 80-90% of clarification, is it going to be the same, or is it going to come back to bite me later, 6 months later, when the new regulation emerges? So I think that is absolutely necessary. And then on that, being able to, I mean, I know living in a country like US where we have multiple regulators, and there are also differences between all the states, it makes it extra complicated. If you're living in a country where you have one government or one source that are deciding these directions, it's a little bit easier. And then on that note, some other countries were much ahead of the US to come out with, okay, at least this is the regulations that we are going to go with. If we're going to update the regulations later, so be it. A lot of regulations are born and created and then nurtured that way, right? So that's something that we absolutely have to have. And another side is, you guessed it, technology. Both from the sort of performance aspect, but also if institutions were to fully embrace this technology and adopt it into their workflow every day, there are still a lot of hurdles that the institutions have to overcome. And I'll give you a little bit of an example of something that we have today. So if you were to consider what I consider a DeFi platform, to invest or to send over some coins to make money, the major technology that is still used today, it's something that probably it cannot stand up to the standard of the institutions because of the governance aspect of it, because of the sort of security check aspect of it, many different things. So those things absolutely need to come together, grow up more before the institution mass adoption comes. For the general mass adoption, I think, this is my theory, but I always talk about my computer. If somebody come and break my computer, I don't know what to do, because I don't know what parts does what in order for me to use PC. But if I buy a PC from a computer shop, I bring it home, I unwrap it, I know how to use it without knowing the pieces. So where the general mass adoption needs to go is where we don't even have to worry about the technology that is backing the crypto. in order for us to. So we're just the user. Just like we don't have to know how the Federal Reserve prints U.S. dollars. We know how to use U.S. dollars. I think all of you know how to use your currency of choice, or where you're living, where the major currencies. Basically, for the cryptocurrency to become a mainstream instrument for us to use, we need to get there. So still today, like, we are very worried about what blockchain really means, what blockchain might look like, how it might impact us. As long as we stay there, I think we are very, very far from having it mass adopted instrument. So that was a little bit of a long answer to you, Michael, but that's my take on your question.
Yeah, let me sort of build on that. I think you have to look and say, I said we're crypto 1.0. Crypto 1.0 will never get to mass adoption. You can't do that at 7 transactions a second. But when you go to 2.0 and they now figure out how to get to the 1,000 transaction a second range, now you can start looking at mass adoption. And then I think these other issues that Harumi mentioned really come into play, regulation and where are central banks going to be, because there's issues with monetary supply and controlling the economy that are also part of this. But look at some of the pluses of crypto right now. $1.6 trillion are invested in it today. This is, as Don said, the 9th largest economy, if it would looked at it as an economy. So it's not going to go away, but it's a very small number of folks that manage that. I think there's something like 1,000 key players that hold over 50%, maybe it was even 90% of the cryptocurrency. So a lot of them have a lot of money, and they can use it various places. The other thing with that, besides that, is the speed of transactions. So look at today. If I do a transaction to buy a cup of coffee, I go there, I give them my credit card or my Starbucks card, and it happens literally instantly in probably milliseconds. If I did that same transaction today in Bitcoin, it would take an hour, roughly an hour, and that to get to a consistency where that's done. However, and this is where we have to be careful with terms. If I want to do a transaction with buying something from Germany, today it would take me 2 to 3 days for that transaction to clear. Before cryptocurrencies, it would take 5 or 6 days. So they're already putting pressure on it. If I did that in Bitcoin, it would happen within that same hour. So this latency issue, there's a lot of things that allow people to want cryptocurrency. If you've got different economies in Africa or in island communities where not everybody has a bank account, I think we live in a very unusual world here in the U.S. We are really much more advanced than we think we are, where most people have bank accounts or credit cards or debit cards. There are many parts of the world they don't. If I'm an island community and I don't have a bank on my island, I have to take my money and go to another island to deposit it if I get cash from somebody. We don't want that. We want something that's all going to be digital. And I think that's where we're going, but it's going to be version 2.0 or maybe 3.0 as we get more regulations, and central banks are going to get into the picture too. The biggest plus with cryptocurrency as it is right now is there's no third party intermediary. That allows tremendous amount of black market activity and people avoiding taxation. If I have a lot of crypto and I don't want to get taxed on my profits, it's a great way to do it. When we start getting that resolved with regulation, and I'm sure it will be, because central banks are not going to allow that to happen for very long, then we're going to have a different situation. And now we'll have a digital cryptographic central bank currencies. And I don't know what the future is going to look like, whether it's going to be the US digital dollar. In the UK, they're talking about a digital pound, where each pound will be using cryptographic techniques. This is all going to be crypto as the heart to serialize each pound note that make it equivalent to a pound note of paper. I think the US is talking about the same thing. The sand dollar in Bahama, they are serialized notes equivalent to the Bahamian dollar. So where is this going to end up? 2.0 version 3.0? It depends, as Harumi said, regulation and technology. And we're not there in either of those places yet. But I think right now we're getting there very quickly. Earthium 2.0 is targeting 2022. Taproot targeting October 2021. Those are going to be major changes, and I think that's just the start of where it's going.
I have two follow-up questions, both of which are for Don, related to what Larry and Harumi have just said. It's kind of a two-part question. One is, Larry, and this is a question that we got in a lot of our pre-session research with other people, with other attendees and whatnot, which is, Larry was talking about central banks getting involved in the game, okay, and what they call central bank digital currencies. So first part of that question is, and that they're cryptographic based, but why would they not be considered cryptocurrencies in your opinion, Don, based on your definition? And then the second part of my question is related to this ongoing theme of it. We were talking about hurdles to adoption and whatnot. Is you recently gave a webcast on the technology hype cycle, which again, attendees, you can find this on the Great IT Pro website. It was a great lecture. And you had a quote, something along the lines of, crypto and ultimately blockchain will be losers. And so that seemed to be your prognosis for the technology, which is a little bit darker than I think Larry's and Harumi's. And I'm wondering if that was basically based on your feeling about the underlying technology, which is blockchain, that it was a loser and that it would pull down crypto, or if it was about crypto itself. So two-part question. One is, are CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, really a cryptocurrency? Why not? And why did you say that crypto and ultimately blockchain will be losers in the long run? Don, you're on mute. We need you to, you're unmuted.
Sorry, I was unmuted.
No problem.
I can't believe, Michael, that you would go back and throw my own words at me. Cannot believe that. Well, first, and I agree that central banks and the banking, all the different governmental banking organizations are going to digitize the currency. That's not cryptocurrency, it's fiat. If it's backed by the central government, by the central bank, you put all the faith and trust of the US government into your dollar bill, and it doesn't matter whether that dollar bill is in my wallet or it's in my physical wallet as a physical piece of paper, or whether it's in my PayPal wallet or any of my other debit cards. It's in my Schwab account, and I pay for it electronically. I pay for stuff electronically every day. That doesn't make it a cryptocurrency. So I think it's a cryptocurrency because, one, it's not backed by a government. And if we want to change the definition, well, then, that's fine, but that's not what a cryptocurrency is to me. And when I said, others feel free, I said that both blockchain and cryptocurrency were losers in the hype cycle. My belief is, based on decades of experience and seeing technology as it evolves, I don't think there's going to be a good technology adoption for this. And it goes back to how the applications are done and the underlying applications, not non-fungible tokens, but the applications themselves as they're running. I think that they've been overhyped, and I don't seriously believe that cryptocurrency is ever going to be anything more than just another investment medium. Hopefully, it will be more along the lines of real estate investment, but my fear is it's going to be more along the lines of the Dutch tulip bulb explosion. And I think that one of these days the bottom's going to fall out because there's nothing underlying it other than a bunch of people who've used up a lot of electricity for mining of their cryptographic applications. So I'll leave myself open to those who've got the information on why it's going to succeed. I personally don't think it's going to.
I want to take a brief pause in the discussion right now, and there were a couple of terms that have been used over the past 30 minutes, and I just would like a very succinct clarification of those terms, because I don't know if our audience entirely knew what was being referred to. So first of all, Larry, could you define Lightning Network? You mentioned that in the course of one of your answers. What is the Lightning Network? Why is it significant? Larry, you're on mute.
The Lightning Network is a new approach. So right now, the underlying technology behind Bitcoin is something, the whole idea of these cryptocurrencies, the big missing piece is there's no third party. When there's no third party, you have a problem when you're trading with people who don't trust each other. That I send you 100 tokens of some kind, and I then quickly send that same 100 tokens, I only have 100 in my wallet, to Don, and I double spend. So this is a problem that I would actually challenge Harumi. This is a problem that's 50, 100 years old, this double spend problem, and a problem that cryptographics have been looking at for years. The solution by Nakamoto was this idea of proof of work, or the Nakamoto proof, which is very expensive. It says whoever has the most computer power, and he says in his paper, and the most electricity, will be able to manage the network and validate blocks. Without a third party, and I make a transaction, someone's got to validate that. Well, in the Bitcoin approach, it's now a network of miners. And they're called miners because he referenced gold mining in his paper from the old days of Colorado Gold Rush. That are miners looking for gold, in this case, looking for Bitcoins. Anytime a miner is the one that gets a block and gets it validated, they get, I think it's 6 Bitcoins, which is about $350,000 today. So it's a lot of money. And miners spend a lot of time. They specialized computers that use enormous amounts of power. But the idea of that today is that's a problem. I think they say it uses more electricity than the state of Switzerland, which again is a pretty big state. However, the Lightning Network is a means of reducing that, as is Ethereum looking at sharding and going to Ethereum 2.0, a different approach called proof of stake. So there are a lot of different attempts to handle the trusted third party to minimize the cost of it. That's why I say 2.0 is going to be different. Right now, one of the big knockoffs, Elon Musk says, oh, it costs too much. It's not climate friendly. When we get to 2.0, these technologies will be climate friendly and much less of a draw on computers. But we're not there yet. The Lightning Network is, again, it's not one, it's an approach. And I think what they're doing is saying not everyone gets to be a miner today. There are 10,000, I think, roughly miners in Bitcoin. There'll be select different mining groups that will just look at part of the blockchain at a time. So I'm not that familiar with it because there isn't one Lightning Network. There's 3 different technology approaches that are sort of mainstream and 3 to 4 more that are secondary, and none has been selected to be the network of the future for Bitcoin.
Thank you. The other term that I wanted to help you clarify for the audience was you mentioned the Taproot Upgrade. What exactly is the Taproot Upgrade, and why is that significant?
The Taproot Upgrade is one to make Bitcoin faster than 7 transactions a second. That's
okay.
Number 1 or number 2. It's going to be reducing the size of transactions. It may be changing the block size. But the other big part of it is to add much more smart contracts. So why is Ethereum thought of as for many people, a better network? It has a much better processing of smart contracts than Bitcoin does. Bitcoin has some, but it's very primitive. They're going to have the ability to have 3 or 4 people attest on a contract, many more complex contracts. So there's a lot of changes. And right now, there is no guarantee there will be a Taproot. There's a suggestion by a small number of developers that these are the changes we need to make to Bitcoin to make it go to the next version, basically Bitcoin 2.0. That's now going through a voting process of all the miners between now and October. And there are a couple, I think every 2 weeks, there's another vote taken. I think the first vote, there was only 24% of the miners agreed. And I think they have to get to 90% before they actually go ahead and make the Taproot upgrade, which would be change the fundamental software powering Bitcoin that all miners would have to adopt to and all wallets would have to adopt to. But there's no guarantee that it'll go to that. And there's no guarantee of what the actual final look of the Lightning Network will be, other than we need to get something going faster than 7 transactions a second for this to be a major currency of the future.
I'm going to ask a follow-up on the follow-up, which is that you referenced smart contracts in your answer. Don, could you help our audience understand what a smart contract is and what exactly Larry was referring to?
Well, let me, if I may, punt that one to me, who really understands smart contracts a lot more than I do.
Okay, Harumi,
too.
could you give us a succinct understanding of what a smart contract is and how it runs off of Ethereum?
Right. Okay. So again, and without getting too much into the technical side of it, because I'm not a technologist myself, it's basically any kind. You can write any kind of if this then so kind of a, outcome into the formula, and then the blockchain or whatever the chain that you are on actually this Ethereum chain actually make that happen. So, you know, that might be something as simple as if tomorrow it rains, we will send 1 Bitcoin to this person, and that can be actually a smart contract, and that's kind of like a contract per se. I think there's still a debate of if this is a legal contract or not. But I mean, you know, right now, for the sake of this argument, it is a contract that both sides kind of signs. In the because we're talking about cryptocurrency today, in this setting, some of the more frequently utilized smart contract is for people to participate in the DeFi world, where we send the coins to one of those DeFi protocols, and you become a market maker, and then there's automatic balancing and whatnot that happens. In terms of like a formula that is different from a smart contract to smart contracts. I'm not even going to start talking about the equation itself. But instead of people, let's say like in the market makers on the traditional market making exchanges, the people kind of come together and they say, okay, I'm going to sell. I have this much to sell. I have this much to buy, and then that kind of matches on the exchange, right? I mean, we don't do the old-fashioned this anymore, but still, that's effectively. Conceptually that happens. That this is happening purely based off of the code that is written into the DeFi platform, and then those are the kind of things that smart contract can allow happen. So it really kind of takes the people aspect more and more out of the financial activities and anything else that we're talking about. That's what the smart contract does. That's what the smart contract is supposed to be. I'm sure there's a lot of evolution of how smart contract is utilized from here onwards.
But there could be other applications of smart contracts beyond just the exchanging and trading in the financial markets. It would has a broader set of use cases beyond that, I'm assuming.
Absolutely, as long as you can write the code, right, and then say like, you know, one thing go in and another thing go out in one way or another, right? That can be written into smart contracts. So yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that for a second. When Harumi said, let's say I will send you 1 token tomorrow if it rains. In that smart contract, we have to define and some kind of, how do we determine it rained? Do we read the National Weather Service for a particular area and said, did it or did it not rain? If I can do that via code, and I say, I read the National Weather Service equivalent of the ticker and said it rained in my area in Chicago, then I have to send you a Bitcoin, and it will automatically happen with the contract. But it's code, and I think that's key. And there's a whole language in smart contracts and Ethereum code. It's a better coding language for smart contracts than Bitcoin is today, whether after Taproot that'll be the case or not. I'm assuming they're trying to leapfrog it and have a better coding capability for smart contracts after Taproot.
So I think smart contracts would basically be considered an application of the blockchain, just like cryptocurrencies are applications of the blockchain. It's not all of the applications of the blockchain are crypto. Some of them are just use cases like what you just explained. And I think that would be fair to say, to help eliminate any confusion amongst terms with our audience.
Well, those are applications that sit on a cryptocurrency chain, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin.
So they're crypto. So those are actually crypto apps.
Those are crypto apps.
Okay, so there are crypto
apps that are on the blockchain technology that I think are beyond the scope of this talk, because we could spend hours discussing that.
So there are cryptocurrencies, coins and tokens, and there's also crypto apps such as smart contracts because they run on the crypto blockchain. And there may also, in addition to that, be use cases or apps that run off of the blockchain which are not crypto based. And so I think this gets to some of the confusion that people have about this topic.
Another element I want to bring in is, one of the areas of the blockchain is how to use it as an investment for appreciation, and assuming it's only going to always increase because there's a limited number of Bitcoins available. But there are also folks that are the equivalent of day traders that are trying to time the market on an hour by hour or minute by minute basis to say, I can make a little bit of money on each transaction by buying high and selling low. And if I do that, I can make it as a day trader in the market, in a commodities market, or in a crypto market. And I think that's another area where a lot of folks are trying to get into that area to make money other than just buy and hold.
Well, that gets to it. I want to just jump in, Don, just for a second, because we have some questions from the audience. A lot of people have been basically asking, and this gets to the question of investment, speculation, whatnot. What is this stuff worth? What's it backed up by, Don? I mean, is there any intrinsic value to a way to sort of intelligently calculate the valuation of what these coins are?
Well, yeah, I think the intrinsic value is in what the market values it at. It really is the commodification of it. It's more along the lines of a commodity than it is some other type of investment vehicle. And I think when you go back to the original, the idea of what creates value, what I get. The way I create a coin is I have to mine for it. And I mine for it by solving all those cryptographic problems and running a lot of calculations. And finally, I get a coin at the end. I've given that to me because of the way I've worked under either Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. I followed those rules. So all the electricity and everything else that I've spent, I get my coin from that. That's how I get one. That's how I make a Bitcoin. That's how I make an Ether coin. But the value of that is based on what someone's willing to pay for it. It takes me this one side to mine for it, and then once I get the gold out of the ground, then the commodity market in Chicago tells me what my gold's worth. That's what the trade-off that I have to make.
So the creation of the coins is extremely energy intensive and requires an enormous amount of computing power, which I'm by the way, I'm responding to also another one of the questions, which is why is it so energy intensive? And that actually puts a cap on how many of these can be created, which creates a certain amount of scarcity, which is what limits the proliferation of them. Otherwise, if it was easy to create these things, then the people wouldn't be paying $30,000-$40,000 for them, presumably. So I think that's part of it. But then what happens when we have an increase in computing power, in an AI revolution, in processing power? How does that affect the scarcity equation? If it becomes easier to solve these problems, does that in any way affect the what people might be willing to pay for these things?
Well, let me quickly take that, then we can maybe have Harumi or Don. Nakamoto built that into his paper. He actually says he references Moore's law that computers are going to get faster, and I think when he first solved it for the first Bitcoin, it was about 2 billion hash calculations to get there. Now today, some of these mining rigs literally have more power than many supercomputers to do that one specific calculation. They're doing trillions of hashes per second with special advanced graphic capabilities designed just to solve the Bitcoin problem. However, again, when we get to, everyone knows it's very expensive. That's why everyone's looking at the Lightning Network or Ethereum 2.0 to say, these are going to be much less expensive in terms of CPU power. But Nakamoto, when he built that, he said every 4 years, roughly, based on Moore's law, we're going to double the processing capability. So I'm going to have to reward the halving event of the number of Bitcoins I have. So before 2017, it was, I think, 12 and a half Bitcoins. Now it's I think 6.5. The next halving event is coming up and it'll be down to 3. So he's automatically built that into the current technology, which I'm saying is crypto 1.0. When we get to 2.0, that whole system is going to have to be managed a whole different way. And I haven't looked at enough details of what people are planning, but I'm sure there's a lot of planning to manage that.
The other final term that I wanted to just have some clarification on that was mentioned over the past half hour, and was mentioned several times by Harumi, was this term DeFi. I'm not sure everybody knows what that specifically refers to. If you could help give us a definition of DeFi and compare and contrast it with this thing that you referred to in previous discussions called CeFi, and just put it in context for our audience.
Yeah, I do apologize about that. I'm usually pretty good at defining the abbreviations, but this time around I forgot about that. So DeFi, I think generally it just started with decentralized finance, and anything I think that's running the financial services of any kind that is running on the distributed ledger technology has been started out as DeFi. But then even within DeFi, there's what we classify as more DeFi, and then there's CeFi, still standing for decentralized finance, and then centralized finance. So in my mind, and then I think in many people's mind nowadays who are active in the investment and then whatnot, is centralized finance are, so we're only talking about the blockchain-based institutions, right? Okay. So the centralized finance are more the entities that are run in a similar way to the traditional financial services companies are run. So think of some of those exchanges where you can go and buy the typical exchanges that you can think of a place to go in and buy, say, Bitcoins or ETH or one of those things. And you actually have people to talk to if you have a question, or they have the customer service if you get stuck, and then they have a centrally created wallet that works for that exchange. These things are centralized finance because there's a centralized management that is actually running that platform. Whereas DeFi, if you try to find somebody to help you in order to figure out how to put the coins on the platform, good luck with that, because it's all run by smart contract, and it's as decentralized as you can find. So that's another thing, though. When we talk about mass adoption, people have to feel comfortable with that kind of where some of the technology is going within the blockchain in order to utilize these platforms. So, is it a possibility that some people will only stay within the centralized finance of decentralized finance? I think there's that possibility. Some people might only use the centrally managed exchanges for the rest of their lives. Are there people who will make a jump over? Absolutely. And I think, the more you're used to being exposed to this blockchain of the world, I think there will be more and more people who will be utilizing both. But right now, that's really my definition of CeFi versus DeFi. And the utilization of DeFi has a little bit more of hurdle because of that kind of difference, where we're not used to seeing a financial services that is run that way.
You guys, Don, Larry, you comfortable with that?
I'm very comfortable with the definition. I think that one of the things one things we want to make really clear, and I get something that gets caught up in the enormity of the cryptocurrencies. Again, mining and creating cryptocurrency is separate from smart contracts and the centralized, decentralized. So the idea of the smart contract, and I'll go back to Larry, I want to go into Starbucks and I'm going to buy my coffee at Starbucks with my Bitcoin. That's a smart contract that I have between my latte that I'm going to get and my wallet somewhere. But whoever manages my Bitcoin wallet has to verify that transaction. And that's what takes the time, is this verification of it, because everything is a smart contract. So through the decentralized, centralized finance, through these applications that Harumi's talking about, we've got to be able to speed that up so I can actually spend my Bitcoin if I had any.
We were talking before we went down this path. We wended our way down this path. We had been talking about regulation, and Harumi had mentioned that how complex the landscape is, because you have regulation that it's being discussed at locally, at the state level, and then at the federal level. You have all these different organizations, not just the IRS, but you have the I think it's Harumi. What are some of the federal organizations that are working on regulation?
You get all sorts of alphabet soup. I mean, to start with, SEC, CFTC. And then there are six additional ones that, FinCEN, obviously, and then
even the DOJ, even the DOJ, right? And then you have international. Then you have international regulation. It's a real thicket, and that it acts as puts a real damper. In fact, in Harumi's discussion, she was talking about how initial coin offerings peaked back in 2017, and they dropped off, which was what startups were basically using ICOs, international coin, initial coin offerings, in order to raise money. And as soon as there was talk about regulation, when the feds realized they had to kind of get control of this, all of that innovation kind of dropped off. I bring this up because regulation can be a positive thing. It can also be a negative thing. It can put a damper on innovation, but it also could be positive, because we have a lot of issues here with ransomware, scams, the dark web, that have to be dealt with, okay? It can only be dealt with through regulation. And I bring all this up to preface, which is that recently there was a discussion in Congress. This was a couple of days ago, I think. It was just a couple of days ago that there was, maybe even last week, that they were discussing why this was dangerous, why cryptocurrencies was dangerous. Does anybody have any thoughts about what Congress? I don't know if anybody watched that, and if anybody knew what was anything that was proposed, and what the tone of what Congress's tone, the tone that was set by Congress in this recent hearing that was set last week.
Yeah, I didn't watch it, but I mean, basically, there's a concern that we need to manage this whole area from a regulatory point of view because of ransomware. One might be make it illegal to spend bitcoins in the U.S. as currency, but I think the bigger picture is there's always going to be countries that aren't going to allow it. So it's really a national, international, global situation. We have to come up with a regulatory environment. And one is using it for illegal purposes. Almost every country is concerned about counterfeit money of their own currency, money laundering, and taxation. And those are the three things that eventually we're going to get a very consistent regulatory framework, probably global, whether it's the International Monetary Fund or whatever. We're not there yet. And I think we just have to work our way through it. It's messy, and it's going to be tied into, I think, as the technology improves and we have wider adoption, we're going to have wider regulation. I think that's just a guarantee. And that's always be probably some amount of dark web activity, because there are people who want that are going to be able to use Tor and get on the dark web and make transactions that are not tracked by the FBI or the KGB. It's not just us alone that are having that problem. Russia has that problem. China has that problem. Every major currency has the problem of counterfeiting, money laundering, and taxation.
Don, you were going to respond, but you were on mute before Larry spoke. If you could remove your mute, and I'm curious what you had to say about that question.
Yeah, I do. And I was just going to say that I hadn't listened to the whole hearing, but a lot of it was predicated on the Colonial Pipeline ransomware, that,
Okay.
discussion of how to handle that. And that was, the majority of the ransomware that was paid in cryptocurrency was returned. And it was returned because it's still unrolling as to what happened, but it seems that they left their wallet unguarded, the cryptocurrency, the ransomware folks, and the FBI or the SEC or someone in the Department of Justice was able to go in and transfer the money out of the ransomware person's wallet back into Colonial Pipelines. So that's what happened. And again, although it takes a lot of effort to be smart enough to put ransomware in place to use all these things, they obviously weren't smart enough to cover their tracks and move it to a different wallet immediately after it went into the one that was deposited in. So, there's still a lot of criminal activity that goes on with cryptocurrency. As criminals, in most cases, they really aren't the smartest technologists around.
I want to get to the issue that everybody really cares about, which is how we can make money from this. That is, now that we know the risks and we know the state of adoption and the hurdles to adoption and what these currencies are and what they're not, there are people making money. And how can we make money? I'm going to throw this to Harumi to start. What do we need to know about how we can make money from all this going forward?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. And the more utility we find with the cryptocurrency, the chance it has to become the mass adopted instrument of some kind. So I think this is a really important question rather than kind of being the novelty goods. But first, I want to kind of I think clarify some things that we were just talking about, and then that is cryptocurrency being associated with some kind of criminal activities. It's true that it does get utilized in it sometimes, and that's why all the regulators are paying extra attention to it. But it's also true that very often the cash gets utilized in the bad people's activities, and people get the ransomware and all sorts of hacking activities kind of penetrating into their workplace for something other than so that they can steal the Bitcoin. Right. So I think from the user's point of view, and then I'm not saying this to make an excuse for the on behalf of all the cryptocurrencies, but I'm just saying as long as anything is digital, it's also on us to actually be conscious of what we are doing with the digital assets that we have. And when I say digital assets, I don't just mean Bitcoin. I'm talking about your infrastructure. What do you do to safeguard your data and everything, the assets, digital assets, that everything that you have? That is a critical aspect of what we do with what's emerging right in front of our eyes. So I just wanted to bring that up, that this is not, bad activities is not just specific to cryptocurrencies. It can happen to physical money as well. And then also it doesn't happen just to the cryptology related activities, but anything digital. As long as the digital is there are bad people, right, including white hackers, that are waiting and then trying every day, every second to see if they can have a little bit of fun with the system. So just to kind of leave all of you into some kind of thinking mode, I just want to say that if you are in a digital world, and we all are, I don't think any of us are cut off and just living on paper and pencil anymore, right? So, I mean, all of us, obviously, because we are watching this webcast. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. Now, having established that, how can we make money? I think I already said it earlier today that I just see this just yet as another alternative investment. I mean, we talked about intrinsic value and then how do we measure it? Yes, it's about what the other counterparty might put on the value of what the digital currency that you might have right now. But like, you know, when we talk about intrinsic value and then, you know, things like that, then, you know, I have to really question, like, you know, why did you pay the amount of money that you pay for that wine? Why do you pay that astronomical amount of money to the paintings that that you found at a painting shop? Does the painting really have an intrinsic value other than like a personal value that I like that drawing? But you pay it because they tell you that's how much it costs you, and you pay it because you like it and because you want to own it. How different is that from owning something like Bitcoin that is digitally created? Or like, and we are not going to go into the NFT discussion today, but NFT, I mean, really, what can you do with it? But people spend a lot of money because there's a sentimental value attached to it. So, I mean, we can't really negate that kind of value behind other than like, you know, how we actually calculate the intrinsic value of, let's say, US dollars, how much is circulating and how many people living in the country and then the people abroad who use that. It's a little bit different way to measure the intrinsic value. And with that, you know, we can do pretty much anything that you think you might do to your investment vehicle today with the money. So you can do the buy and hold, you can do speculation, you can do arbitrage, going from a different, this one instrument to another or from exchange to exchange. As long as you're dealing with certain types of coins, you can do, and then there are, as I was saying earlier, CeFi world and DeFi world where you can actually send your coins to make money. And you know, not everybody does yet, but like investment managers, advisors are beginning to look at this as a potential investment vehicle too. So that could become a part, that could start consisting a tiny portion of your portfolio down the line. So I really consider this as one of things that you may not necessarily want to hold as much as you might be holding a bond or a traditional equity that you get familiar, you became familiar with. But if you think about, let's say, like a high yield bond, back in 80s, it was a total novelty goods, and then it became one of those things that is actually a stable asset to stay. And then who is going to say that it's not gonna, it's not the same, just because it's new and it's digital. So that's how I think you can make money. That's how it's coming into the financial services, and that's how I would think this is. So as we established at the beginning, none of us are making any kind of financial advice here, but also, like, you know, it's important to know what else is out there other than what you already have in your portfolio.
Great, great answer. What about the possibility of, and I'm half joking right now, but in some of our sessions in preparing for this panel, I was asking, what if one was to create one's own blockchain and create an API and create one's own currency? How hard is that? How easy is that? And that gets to the, right. Could you explain, Larry, exactly what you meant when you explained that to me about how easy it is to actually create a new currency and sell it? Because I think that gets to the root of this almost world of illusion that we're dealing in part.
Well, almost all Bitcoins that I'm aware of, or Bitcoins, crypto, are based on open source software. You can go to GitHub and look at the actual code that's used to create Bitcoin or Ethereum. So it's very easy to, I can copy the code from there and start my own coin. I just have to get the ability to get people to buy it. Dogecoin did it through the novelty of a dog and sort of a funny approach to it, and they've made quite a bit of money. I think that's why there's so many coins out there, you know, in the thousands. There's a lot of people say, oh, I can do it, and if I can sell it, you know, hey, maybe I'll only make a couple 100,000, but that's better than not. And in the case of Bitcoin, Nakamoto is probably a trillionaire today, and many of the early adopters were. So there's a lot of potential value in that. You can copy the code. We could create a Malutus coin or a a great IT Pro coin that we can sell to people. It would be very easy. The key would be to how to get people to buy it and then manage it. But the ultimate thing is, Don alluded to it, there's no value. Value is always the value in the eyes of the beholder. But in the case of stock, there is much more value than in Bitcoin. I own a share of a company. I can get an estimate of the value of that stock based on the cost and revenue of that company. If I hold a fixed investment, a bond, there's a certain period of time and a certain interest rate attached to that bond, although the bond value changes based on the value of the market. In Bitcoin, there's nothing. But with 1.6 trillion people investing in it, there's obviously a lot of intrinsic value that people feel it's important. And I think, as Harumi said, I think you can make money by buying and holding. You can make money by trading it and trying to time the market. And I think you can also make money by creating applications taking advantage of Bitcoin. There are a variety of applications that are coming up that tied to smart contracts, that if you use my application, I'm going to get a transaction fee for doing that, and I'm going to make money on that. And a lot of these are not all that much different than the kind of complex financial transactions that led, in my mind, to 2008 and the Great Recession. We had very complex transactions using credit swaps and all kinds of financial instruments that I don't understand. People are creating those every day using smart contracts, and they're making money at that. But to me, that's sort of over my pay grade to be able to do that. I can go to GitHub and look at the Ethereum code or the blockchain code. That's one thing, but to create a really novel, smart financial instrument, that's for folks that are really into that. And Harumi knows some of those and is much more into it than I am.
I have a specific question for Don. Don, I have a specific question, and before I'm sorry, but I do have a specific question. Just Harumi we're talking about making money here, and Harumi talked about investing, buying, holding, trading. Larry talked about actually creating a new coin and selling it. I love that idea. I'm going to look into that immediately, Larry. Thank you. and also creating applications that leverage this technology. Before you respond with what you wanted to say, Don, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I wanted to know what you thought about how realistic it was to make money as a miner, either as an individual or as an organization, and what it would take to do that.
Well, there are a number of cases where people did make money years and years with that. One of the special people that was doing the mining was the head of the computing facility in Krasnoyarsk, Russia. And Krasnoyarsk is right outside of Novosibirsk. It's up in Siberia, but it's also where Russia and the Soviet Union had their analog to Los Alamos. It's where they did all their nuclear research. And this guy who was head of the computing ended up, for almost a year, took over the majority of the computing resources there to mine for Bitcoin. And he ended up with a fairly large number of Bitcoins, but unfortunately, he didn't get out of the country soon enough. And they found out what he was doing, and he's now in a different part of Siberia. But there are people who made money doing that, and you could do that. And there were a lot of people who took over. I mean, it was basically, you saw a large increase in denial of service attacks where people went out and attacked networks so they could do mining on the networks. So they actually did make money doing that in the beginning. Now it's become harder as there's more Bitcoins out. And as Larry alluded to, it takes a lot more calculations now to earn a Bitcoin. So in the beginning, it was easier. It got started real well, but it was not. Now it's very difficult to make money being a miner.
It's not the type of thing you can do from your laptop.
No, it is not the kind of thing you can do for your laptop. And if you think about and if you think about the distributed part of it, if anyone remembers the SETI programs, SETI from 10 years ago or so, where you loaded it on your PC and you shared in doing the calculations to see if there was any radio messages coming out of space. And basically the mining programs do the same thing. They're like that. They're going to take over your computer during downtime and create some coin. It just takes too many servers to do that now. You'd have to have rooms full of servers, and they've got to be running 24/7 to create 1 or 2 Bitcoins in a reasonable amount of time.
We covered a lot of territory, and I think we hit a lot of all the key points that I wanted to have. We have a hard stop at 1:30, and I do have some questions that are waiting from the audience, and I just want to put them out there. One of them is, doesn't the sheer number of currencies lead to a Tower of Babel problem in terms of adoption? Is a shakeout required in which the number is going to be reduced to a much smaller number in order for us to get to wider adoption? So I guess the question is the sheer quantity of different coins an obstacle to adoption, or is that a feature, not a bug?
I think it's a feature based on what Larry said, and I agree with Larry. You can go out and download anything you want today to become to make your own cryptocurrency. The problem is, how do you value it, and how do you add value to it the way something like Bitcoin does? I think the story we have to look at for how many there are is Elon Musk, smart guy, great technologist. He and Snoop Dogg, the rapper, came out with Dogecoin, and they made a big splash, and people bought it because it was just unique and interesting and so on. But last week, Elon Musk, in a financial, one of the financial disclosures, said he is now refusing to accept cryptocurrencies for the purchase of Tesla vehicles. So on the one hand, he's created this funny, great Dogecoin with a rapper. On the other hand, he's saying, hey, in my real business where I make money, I'm not accepting crypto.
Interesting. Yeah, I never really realized that the cognitive dissonance there. That's very revealing.
Yeah.
We have another question which I think is really important, because I know I had this question a couple of months ago. What in the world is a non-fungible token? Who would like to try to define that?
To me, it is, so I did say NFT earlier, and I was thinking I did not define that. So whoever asked that question, thank you for actually spelling that out, non-fungible token, NFT. What it is really is, it's a token, basically the token that has specific image of some kind, that has a very probably like a specific sentimental value of some kind for the issuers. And if it's issued by like celebrities or something, then maybe owning it itself is a novelty act. That's, to me, what it is right now. The way NFT is taking off right now, it is what it is. But to me, also NFT includes certain type of package tokens that are issued. Like maybe they're going to have a different name down the line, but the certain tokens backed by gold or real estate or something like that. Maybe we are going to be calling them collateralized token in the future, but without having that sort of setting, that to me also is token. And basically token that by itself may or may not have this specific value, like Bitcoin, like one price that you can go see. But I mean, that has certain value attached to it. And then on that note, the NFT that is really taking off today is something that you really cannot put the true value on it just yet. But that's what a lot of people thought about Bitcoin when it was just created and people began to use it. And that's why famously this one guy at the one pizza shop that was accepting the Bitcoin at the time had to spend 26 Bitcoins to buy 2 pies of pizza, right? So where is NFT going from here? Really, it's only time will tell. And probably there will be even more NFTs than possibly there are cryptocurrencies. The way, like it was already mentioned, it's how easy it is to actually create an NFT. Actually, my husband created one NFT for me too. For me, that's got a lot of value because it's got a picture of something that I really dear to myself. But if I show it to anybody else, that would have a value of absolute zero, other than, oh, that's cute. So that's, non-fungible token is that today. Is it going to have some value? Yeah, possible, because when we were children and our children were children, we used to trade all these cards with baseball players' image and things like that. They actually had a value. So will there be a place where NFT is going to take that over? I think it is very possible. Although probably the difference is it's so much easier for us to come up with an image of anything today, as opposed to like way back when it was very difficult to get the famous bass player's picture. That maybe like what kind of value we put on it might be slightly different. But if the issuer is, I don't know, Denzel Washington, would you buy it? Maybe I would. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a little broader than that, though. I think it's basically, you have to think of an NFT as something equivalent to a collectible, which there's a huge market still in baseball cards, basketball cards, different sports, art, anything that is non-fungible, that you can't take apart, but you can sell shares of. So I look at NFTs as just the same thing as collectibles in that market. And in fact, I believe the Major League Baseball just opened up that they're going to be having a NFT on baseball cards. They're sponsoring. So just if you think of NFTs as collectibles, what's the price of a Mickey Mantle card today? What's the price of a Michael Jordan card today? It depends on, we have specialists who decide and do an assessment, say, well, there's very few of these, or we have a card that it had double printed. Now that's special, so it goes up in value. I think the highest was a piece of art, digital art, was auctioned off for $63 million equivalent as an NFT. So I think that's a different market than cryptocurrency, but again, a market that's going to stay. We have a collectibles market, whether it's Barbie dolls or baseball cards or art, and that's never going to go away. People are like collectibles, and that's going to be partial of that. And again, it's something you can create your own NFT, as Harumi said, on whatever thing you value. This coffee cup, to me, is very valuable. I could create an NFT and sell shares of it to all of you.
So, Michael, I just have to refer back to my last webinar I gave, right? NPI on winners and losers. I only have 2 words for NFT: Paris Hilton. The largest proponent of NFTs out there, non-fungible tokens, is Paris Hilton. She's a big promoter of it. And just like I'm not going to buy my cryptocurrency from a rapper, I'm probably not going to take advice on NFTs from a person who's famous because she's famous. So I think we have to look at all sides of this. I agree there's some value to NFTs, but the messengers that are out there today on NFTs are not doing it any favors.
I hate to belabor this, but I find it a very confusing subject myself. Is it uniquely about a digital asset? In other words, I think what I understand about NFTs is part of how it works is that if you have something that's digital, say a digital piece of art, something that's easy to copy over and over and over again, right, which makes it nearly worthless, right, that it's the original that has the value. And that the NFT is a way of authenticating and verifying the fact that this is the original upon which the copies are being made. So if I create a piece of digital art and I copy it 1 million times and I give it away for free, that the original might actually have value. But Larry, you're also saying that you create an NFT out of your coffee cup. That's not a digital piece of art. There's nothing digital about that. So
it's a token that represents the coffee cup. So it will be digital, and the key there is I can track who owns those tokens, and I can track the history for each one. So if I sell
anything can be made a digital token. Anything that's concrete. It doesn't have to start as a digital piece of art, say, which is a very easy example. It can actually be a baseball card that you to mix this up, you could actually take a baseball card and you could turn that into a token.
I believe that's the case now. I'm
Yeah.
not an expert in that, but that's where I guess I differ a little than Don. I think NFTs, whether it's Paris Hilton, maybe the one she pushes aren't. But when Major League Baseball says we're going to come out with one, I have a different feeling about it. And I think that they're here to stay as our collectibles.
That actually happened. That was in the news. You're saying Major League Baseball had
on one of the baseball games last week. There was an advertisement that they're coming up with a non-NFT for baseball cards, or baseball something paraphernalia.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, look, we could talk about this all day, people. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. Maybe we're going to have to do another one. I really want to thank our panelists. It's been great. By the way, it's been a lot of fun. We covered a lot of territory. I know that we didn't answer everybody's questions. I know that there's still a lot of confusion, but as I was saying the other day to Larry, confusion is a very good place to be. It's very fertile ground because it inspires curiosity. It inspires you to work on clarifying those confusion areas, which is going to draw you deeper into this and actually give you a very accurate mental model. So that's a good place to be. But if you have any follow-up questions, I'm going to put you have the contact information for our panelists. You can reach Larry, you can reach Harumi, you can reach Don. If you have any questions for me, my email address is on the screen. But at this point, we are going to dismiss. So thank you for your time. Thank you again, panelists. It has been a pleasure working with everybody. Have a nice day.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks to all the attendees.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity.